Hello and welcome to Money 2020. I'm Hannah Wallace from Finextra TV, and with me now in the press lounge is Matt Moynahan, CEO of OneSpan. Matt, thank you very much for taking the time out of the busy event to speak with us in the press lounge.
Thank you, Hannah. It's great to be here.
Really good to have you on. And now I know you'll be very busy during the event speaking to other delegates about those major trends we're seeing across the financial services industry. So I want to hear a bit about that, but also with those trends come some challenges. So let's start there.
Well, it's great to be here in person. This certainly shows that things are opening up, and I think opening up is probably the theme that's going on right now in the financial services industry as well. To put things in context, we're probably in Web 3.0 of that digital transformation curve. Web 1.0 is really just getting the internet up and running, which was more around reading. Web 2.0 was really around reading and writing. And maybe some basic e-commerce. Web 3.0 really is around the entire digital product portfolios coming online. And you also have the perfect storm of data privacy, data sovereignty, and data ownership in some cases. Web 4.0, and we're not quite there yet, it's really the mainstream use of blockchain and consensus technologies, more decentralization and things of that nature. So, with the Web 3.0 phenomenon that's coming on, it's all around a much more complex set of digital interactions. And as we know in the financial services industry, the end user has always been the primary attack surface. Right, and certainly with the credential theft and identity theft at an all-time high, and it's going up every single year. That threat vector mapped with increased complexity around digital interactions with some of these new digital products really creates an attack surface that is much more easy to exploit than it was in the past. Combined with that, you've got global regulatory environment. I think it's like close to $250 billion spent on global compliance, right? Things around data sovereignty, data privacy, bank ID, digital wallets, national ID systems, really create this sort of perfect storm of complexity for banks to navigate in this new world. And complexity, as we know, is the friend of hackers, nation states, and others who look to take advantage of it. So, with that, we're seeing, some fundamental different thinking around how security needs to be woven into the business processes. Historically, banks, they had to do it on premise, and now they're doing it in the cloud, cobble together various solutions to create a fabric to transact online. That creates seams. Okay, and so what we're seeing now is that the approach to security can't be just providing building blocks, but it's got to be seamlessly woven through the customer journey as banks interact to make sure that those processes are protected pre and post authentication, given some of the identity threats that we're seeing out there.
All right, thank you very much for setting the scene there and bringing us up to date, and like the analogy there as well. So what are the requirements then for conducting businesses in this increasingly hyperconnected and digital world?
I've been encouraging our clients really to think end to end, and it starts with obviously knowing your customer, knowing who they are, making sure you get that right as much as possible, right? And given the threat environments, given the threat against identity, it's hard to make sure it's 100%. Okay. The next step is to really authenticate and make sure that authenticated user comes online, but you don't stop authenticating them once you let them onto the network. You have to continuously authenticate them. The next step is interaction. There's a new demand, as we've talked about, around a hybrid engagement with an end user post-COVID. For some transaction types that are high value, high touch, there is a requirement to interact with them in a slightly different way than the past. And so you having a secure interaction model with them in a virtual environment, trying to replicate that human. This is really around trying to make sure that interaction model is secure and globally compliant. Then you would move into a signing phase and then even a storage phase after that. And so I do think moving end to end across the entire continuum is important.
Mm-hmm, that's right. And in the last 2 years, there has been this focus on technology and the processes to enable customers to digitally transact. But we're seeing a bit of a shift and a bit more of a demand to integrate a human element into those digital channels. So how do we go about doing that?
Well, I mean, this is going to be the big challenge, right? How do you let customers interact with a bank where they want to interact? And it may be one day going into a branch office, maybe another day doing a completely virtual. Security really is paramount to that. I mean, you have things like qualified electronic signatures. You have things like notary over in the U.S. So humans have always been part of the transaction process, whether it be a bank teller or a notary. Non-repudiation of a transaction has always been part of the banking world. Doing it in a virtual world is much more difficult. So you're going to have, I think, a focus on a more systematic approach to how you secure that interaction, starting with the identity of the end user, the authentication, but the interaction model virtually has to be secure. This is so much bigger than an electronic signature on a document. It's so much bigger than Zoom or Teams. This is around how do you create a truly secure environment for virtual interactions with business workflow, and it's fundamentally different than anything we've seen before in the banking industry.
Sure. So still some way to go then, but watch this space. It's safe to say, Matt. Look, I'll let you get back to the event, but thank you so much for joining us in the press lounge and sharing your insights today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Thanks.